What's up guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at some unconventional and unpopular art advice from Reddit, and we're going to try to figure out if they're actually good or if they should remain unpopular. Our first victim is Woman Thorn. Your taste level should always exceed your skill level. This is not failure, it's progress. So basically you should always hate yourself to a certain degree, and this is a similar one too. Be your own worst critic. This might be controversial since most people would tell you not to be too hard on yourself to keep you motivated. Personally, I am guilty of doing that. However, I feel like that would make people blind to their own flaws to protect their own fragile motivation. Jeez. Am I so condescending? This first one's gonna get a solid 9 out of 10 for me because that's exactly how I feel about my work. But the second one, oh boy, where do I start? This phrase, be your own worst critic, needs a lot of elaboration. It doesn't mean that you should look at every single piece you produce, just tear it down, and verbally abuse yourself a little bit along the way. Because quite frankly, that is how you kill your passion. What I personally like to do when I don't like something about my work is I try to analyze it and learn from it. I want to see exactly what it is that I could have done differently. And instead of just hating on myself and berating myself for not being able to do this one thing, I instead take that lesson and I move it to the next piece so that hopefully we can be better without hating ourselves. This is a great one, guys, and it's probably going to trigger some people. You don't have a style when you're new at art. That style is just your comfort zone, and it becomes a major hindrance to your learning and your artistic growth. Artists that are just getting into their groove, producing more, getting a flow to create more consistently, oftentimes will claim a style no matter how amateur it looks. Oh, geez. This becomes their comfort zone, and they look for ways to improve that style, but they're limiting themselves and boxing themselves in. When they ask for criticism and people give them feedback, they often brush it off as, well, that's just my style. The minute you get comfortable in your art is the minute you stop improving. Now, this might be indeed controversial for people who like to claim a style, but I definitely 100% agree with this. Personally, I see a lot of this too. I see a lot of people just picking a style, and suddenly everything they do revolves around this one specific style. Now, that's not to say you can't do that style well. I'm sure you could, but your overall growth, your overall trajectory as an artist is going to take a big hit if you limit yourself and box yourself in. So that's going to get a solid 10 out of 10 for me. Now, if that last tip hit really hard, just wait till you see this one. Holy moly. Focusing on a messy style can allow you to practice composition faster and hide some of your flaws, but in the long term, you're just avoiding learning the difficult things that would actually improve your art. If you only do messy, do pristine. If you only do pristine, do messy. Both of you will learn something. But it's my style. Is it? Or is it a comfort crutch you don't want to let go of? Just because your preferred style is one thing does not mean you should never experiment with other styles. Oh, Jesus. Just as solid as the last one. That's going to be a 10 out of 10. You know, while we're on the topic of style, we might as well just go all in on this. Just brace yourself. My unpopular opinion is only amateur artists worry about style. It's not something to worry about at all. Your personal aesthetic sensitivities and individual anatomy will give you your style. It's not something to chase. People put too much stock in this and lose focus on practicing foundations. It's silly. Style is something you have to build. Finding it is only 10% of the work. Beginning artists need to focus less on finding their style and more on experimenting and learning. Now, I just want to give my 2 cents on this, okay? So if you guys follow me on Instagram, you will know that I have a relatively discernible style. So it might be natural for you to assume that these posts would offend me personally, and they don't. In fact, these fellas are spitting nothing but truth. Now, when you see me make a piece like this, or like this, or like this, throughout that process, not once am I thinking about creating a specific style. And to me, that's the coolest thing because you don't find your style. It's something that naturally happens to you as you put in the practice and get better. Your style is going to be a mixture of all the artists who inspire you, plus your personal gravitation towards certain aesthetics. Get that practice in, get those hours in, eventually you're going to realize, wait a minute, I tend to draw this a certain way and I tend to draw that a certain way. Huh. Could this be a style? Here's an interesting take on how you should learn, and this might be one of the takes of all time. I would say not to listen to people who say you have to learn X before you can learn Y. Examples: you have to learn to draw from reference before you can learn to draw from imagination. You have to learn realism before you learn other styles. You have to learn basics before you can improvise and do your own thing. I won't knock on anyone who wants to do things in a specific order either, but I don't feel that there are any hard or fast rules that apply to everyone. If drawing from imagination appeals to you, then draw from imagination. imagination. If you want things to be more realistic, then use references. Oh my god. Okay, so you won't knock on anyone who wants to do things in a specific order, but I'm gonna knock on you. This one should truly remain unpopular. Okay, look, I understand this. I understand the sentiment. But like, obviously, you want to draw things that you want to draw. You want to practice things that you want to practice. So the idea is to just do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. But this does not change the fact that if you try to learn to draw something without references, you will never know how to actually draw that thing. If you try to break all the rules and stylize your character's anatomy without actually understanding the real anatomy behind it, you will never be effective at stylizing your character. So yeah, you want to do it, you can do it. But just know that if you want your results to actually improve in a meaningful way, some of these you have to learn X before you learn Y examples are pretty much unavoidable. That's a 2 out of 10. And I feel like some of these points here are actually very relevant to what we just talked about. Anime art is just realism with an anime face slapped on. People don't understand that their favorite mangaka has thousands of hours doing realistic studies and portraits. That's what I'm saying. It goes back to learning X before you can do Y effectively. The anatomy in anime is actually very realistic, barring the head and face. That's especially the case for male characters, so stuff like figure drawing / life drawing have a great carryover to anime arts. Though I think you don't have to focus less on anime, but rather you should apply the fundamentals to your anime arts. I could not have said that better myself, you absolute beast of a man. I think when people say stuff like you should learn anatomy before you do anime, there's a certain level of misinterpretation. Some people might assume that means I'm just not allowed to do any anime now until I actually get a grasp of my fundamentals, but that's not the case. You can do two things at the same time. You can learn anime style and learn anatomy, and eventually your anime knowledge and your anatomy knowledge start blending into each other, and you have this beautiful amalgamation, this beautiful baby. Stop drawing anime characters. 1 out of 10. You sound like an elementary school art teacher who hates their job. Stop it. Learn to like making art before you learn how to be good at art. I see so many people say stuff like, I hate my art, or I'm unhappy because I feel like I'm not improving fast enough. And it's like, if you hate what you're doing so much, it's going to be really hard to get better. You can work on improving your skills without being absolutely miserable in the process. And this kind of goes back to my first point, like, yeah, critique yourself, try to find the things in your art that you don't like, but also at the same time, just don't be mean to yourself. You know, like, just chill out. Relax. Literally don't bother with trying to improve. Oh my god. That's a hot take right there, okay? Let me rephrase that. Don't bother trying to improve if it takes away your joy for art. Okay, now we're talking. You might literally just need to take a step back and take a break. I've seen so many people, including myself, fall apart on their progress just because we're trying to force ourselves to a pace that isn't working and makes you start hating the idea of picking up a pencil. I can agree with some of the stuff that's being said here, but I don't agree with the phrase, don't bother trying to improve, because I think we should always be trying to improve. Now, just like everything else in life, this is a balancing act. It's never shameful to take a break. There are many days where I just cannot put anything down on the canvas. It just doesn't look right. And I just say to myself, you know what? It's not happening today, Chief. So I just go and drink my sorrows away. This one's really interesting. Drawing advice that I live by. It's about learning how to see, not how to draw. Might sound contradictory when your drawing advice is not about learning how to draw, but I think I know what he's talking about here. I would say probably 50% or more of drawing is actually in the observing part. It's not in the actual drawing. When I was a little baby learning art in the Chinese art schools, we'd be, doing graphite drawings of still life, and one of the rules that they taught me was, for however long I spend looking down at my paper, I should spend that exact same amount of time or more looking up at my subject. And I think that really ingrained in me just how important it is to actually observe your subject to be able to draw it well. Even though not many words were used here, that's a 10 out of 10. Why use many words when few words do trick, This one is genuinely beautiful, and this is an unpopular advice that I think I needed to hear as well. Not everything you create needs to be posted on social media. This is something that I have to remind myself very often too, is that when I make art, I do it for myself. Maybe it's to capture a feeling that I felt, or it could just be therapeutic for me to sit down and paint, water. But at the end of the day, you do that thing for yourself, right? You're not thinking about like, ooh, I really don't want to do this thing, but my followers want to see this thing, so I guess I'll do this thing. And then you do it with no passion, and your followers realize you have no passion, and they don't end up liking this thing anyways. I think I've heard a really interesting saying from Rick Rubin, where he mentions that no artist, whether it be visual or music, knows exactly what the people want. We all have instances where we make something that we're so proud of, we put it out there and it just doesn't get any traction. And we also have those instances where somehow a piece that didn't really resonate with you ended up resonating with a lot of people and got a lot of attention online. So the bottom line is nobody knows. Okay, so if you have to make something and post it on social media, just know that you should be making that thing for yourself in the first place. This might be a shot at me. Don't follow art advice from art influencers, especially when starting out. Turn off the phone and just draw. You're gonna get a 5 out of 10 because number one, I'm biased and it's only half true. The thing is, you don't just draw and get better. You have to learn from something, okay? Even if you're self-taught, you're absorbing that information from someone. And social media has just got this abundance of information that you can actually learn from. But I can definitely see where he's coming from, because if you follow every art advice from every influencer you ever see, you're gonna be trash. The amount of irresponsibly bad advice out there is tremendous. You, as an intelligent art baby, you have to be very, very picky with who you take advice from. My go-to rule is if somebody's ever trying to teach me something in art, I go and look at their work. I just want to see if they actually have substance to back up what they're saying. Now, this is going to be especially true for short form content. So if somebody's trying to teach you something like anatomy, for example, but their own anatomy is a little bit wonky, you got to really take that advice with a grain of salt. Make sure that you learn and take advice from people that you trust and people who have done it. All right, so you know what that means. You should not, absolutely not be listening to me. There's a huge emphasis now on originality, even as a beginner artist. While plagiarism is unacceptable, I feel like students and professionals alike should return to practicing some studies of the greats. This used to be very commonplace practice, but I'm seeing it less and less nowadays. This is a 10 out of 10, 100% true. Again, talking about my Sam Does Arts lore, when I was a baby, when I was learning how to draw in the more academic side of Chinese art school, oh my god, we did tons of studies of great artists. We studied watercolor still life drawings from great artists. We studied graphite bust drawings from great artists. And it's very liberating because it was like a completely shameless study. You're trying to get as close to what they did as possible, and in the process, you're absorbing all the things that they're doing. So yeah, bring that back. Why not? This is fantastic. And I want to end on this thread because this is kind of an old thread, but I found this absolutely hilarious. Pinterest girl paintings are just boring as... Especially now that there's so many accounts deliberately doing the Sam Does Arts Disney-fied style. No hate to him, he's very skilled, but the genre as a whole is just so annoying now. I swear to God, the amount of people I've seen just trying to copy Sam Does Arts' style is so ridiculously many, it's sickening. Don't run from your responsibilities and find your own style. First of all, I'm sorry I didn't see this earlier, so then I had a chance to talk about it, but I think this is fine. This is honestly perfectly fine. I think if you see another artist's work that really just inspires you in some way, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to replicate some of the stylistic choices that they make. I mean, personally, when I first started stylizing, I had to copy a lot of other artists as well. But you know, eventually you learn to kind of integrate these different elements into your own style and start kind of adding your own personal touch to it. So I'll just say, if you guys like the work that I do, there's nothing wrong with studying it and trying to replicate the style. You know, oftentimes that's exactly what people do to actually try to level up their own art and eventually kind of implement some of their own personal flares and touches into it. So nothing wrong with that, okay? At least that's how I personally feel about it, okay? Now, with AI, that's a whole different beast. I hate that shit. Anyways, guys, so those are some of the most unpopular and controversial art advice that I've found on Reddit. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this, okay? Do you agree with all of these? Do you disagree with some of them? Or do you have more that you want to add? Subscribe if you want to see more art-related content. I also just released a new hair tutorial on my Patreon. This is the most comprehensive, best hair tutorial in the world. So check it out if you guys want to support the channel. I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys on the next video.